Hey, I'm Tessa. I thought I was living the American dream. I was married to Mike, the guy I'd liked since high school. We had a cute house in the suburbs, matching coffee mugs, the whole thing. I even got along with my in-laws at first. Karen and Bob seemed nice, always inviting us over for Sunday dinners, but that changed quickly. It started small, with Karen making little comments about my cooking. "Oh, Tessa, is this how you usually make pot roast?" she'd say. I thought she was just being a typical mother-in-law, but things got worse. Bob started questioning every decision Mike and I made, like suggesting Mike should work at his company instead of his current job. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just normal in-law stuff, but I felt something was off. Then I got the big news. I was pregnant. I was thrilled and couldn't wait to tell everyone. Mike was over the moon, spinning me around in the kitchen. I thought this would bring us all closer, but when we told Karen and Bob, it felt like I'd announced I had the plague. Karen's smile got stiff, and Bob just grunted and stared at the TV. Mike didn't seem to notice, but I felt the atmosphere freeze. From that day, it felt like they were out to get me. Every visit and phone call brought criticism about my job, friends, and how I was preparing for the baby. Karen would question my food choices, and Bob would suggest I quit working because it was too stressful. It was driving me crazy, but Mike didn't see it or didn't want to. He'd say they were just trying to help or that I was being too sensitive. Things reached a breaking point at my baby shower, which Karen had insisted on hosting. When I walked in, it felt like I had crashed someone else's party. None of my friends were there, just Karen's bridge club and some distant relatives. "Surprise, dear. We thought this would be more appropriate," they said. I completely lost it. Right there in front of everyone, I laid into Karen, saying, "Appropriate? You mean boring and not about me at all. This is my baby shower, Karen, not your social club meeting." Mike quickly pulled me aside, looking embarrassed, and whispered, "Tessa, what's gotten into you?" "They're just trying to help." That's when I realized they had gotten to him. Somehow, my in-laws had turned Mike against me. The argument that followed was intense. Harsh words were exchanged, tears were shed, and by the end of it, I was standing on the porch with a suitcase while Mike closed the door on me. He said, "I think you need some time to cool off, Tessa. Maybe stay with a friend for a while." Just like that, I was out, pregnant, alone, and wondering how my perfect life had turned into a nightmare. There I was, pregnant and kicked out. Classy, right? For a few nights, I even slept on park benches, feeling like the world's biggest loser. Then, I remembered Jade, my old college roommate. I hadn't spoken to her in ages, but desperate times, right? I showed up at her door, looking like a total mess. Jade's eyes went wide. "Tessa, holy, what happened to you?" The next thing I knew, I was crying on her couch, pouring out the entire awful story. Bless her heart, Jade didn't hesitate for a second. She said, "You're staying here." End of discussion. So there I was, crashing in Jade's spare room, feeling like a charity case, but Jade wasn't having any of my pity party nonsense. "Get your butt up, Tessa, we're going job hunting," she said. Easier said than done when you're walking around like a waddling penguin, but Jade was determined. We hit every business in town, and just when I thought we were done, boom, baby decided it was time to make her entrance. I'm in the hospital, squeezing Jade's hand so hard it feels like I'm trying to juice an orange. She's right there with me, cheering me on. "Come on, Tessa, push, you got this." And then, just like that, Lily arrives, this tiny, screaming bundle of awesomeness. The moment I see her, it's like my life flips. I've got someone to fight for now. Jade helps me get back on my feet, watching Lily while I work 2 jobs. It's exhausting, but I'm making it work. One day at the diner, I overhear some guys talking about real estate. "Man, I can't believe that dump sold for that much. Location, location, location." Something clicks in my head. I start reading everything I can about real estate. Jade thinks I've lost it. "Real estate, Tessa? Are you sure?" But I've got this fire in me. I study like crazy, pass the exam, and before I know it, I'm showing houses. On my first sale, I'm shaking like a leaf, but I close the deal. It hits me, I can do this. Fast forward a couple of years, and I'm thriving. I've got my own agency, Lily's in preschool, and life is good. Then one night, I'm at a fancy industry dinner, chatting with some big shots, when I overhear something. "Yeah, old Bob's in trouble. Heard they might lose the house." My ears perk up. "Bob who?" I ask, trying to play it cool. "Bob Thompson. He used to be a big deal, but now he's drowning in debt. Shame about the house, it's a real beauty." I almost choke on my champagne. Thompson, my former in-laws. The ones who threw me out like I didn't matter. Right then and there, a wild idea starts forming in my head. It's risky, probably a terrible plan, but I can't shake it. I grab my phone and shoot a text to my lawyer friend. Alex, need to talk. Got a proposition for you. How do you feel about shell companies? Alex replies almost instantly, Tessa, what are you up to? I grin, feeling like the cat that swallowed the canary. Oh, nothing much, just thinking about getting into the landlord business. As I leave the dinner, my mind's racing. This is it, my chance to turn the tables and show them exactly who they messed with. Watch out, Thompson family, because Tessa's coming back, and this time, I'm the one holding all the cards. So there I am, scrolling through foreclosure listings like it's my new obsession, and bam, I find it, the Thompson house. I almost spit out my coffee. I call Jade right away. You're not going to believe this. Tessa, it's 3 a.m. Someone better be dead or on fire. Remember that crazy idea I had? It's go time. The next morning, I'm in Alex's office, laying out my plan. He looks at me like I've completely lost it. Let me get this straight, you want to buy your in-laws' house through a shell company? Bingo, can you make it happen or not? Alex sighs, rubbing his temples. It's not illegal, but Tessa, are you really sure about this? I lean in, dead serious, more sure than I've ever been about anything. For the next few weeks, we work out all the details. Jade thinks I'm nuts, but she's in my corner. If this blows up in your face, don't come crying to me, but also, I've got bail money ready. The day of the auction, I'm a ball of nerves. Alex is bidding on behalf of our fake company, and I'm in the back, trying not to throw up. Going once, going twice, sold to Karma Properties LLC. I nearly pass out. Holy, we actually did it. The next few days are a whirlwind of paperwork, inspections, and all the boring stuff, but then, it's official, I now own the Thompson house. Jade's helping me prepare for the big reveal. She gives me a look and asks, you sure you want to do this, Tessa? It's not too late to back out. I look at myself in the mirror, power suit on, hair done, makeup perfect, war paint. I think with a grin, oh, I'm sure about this. It's time they learned who they're dealing with. I grab my briefcase, feeling like a boss. Inside, I've got the new lease agreement, terms so tight it'd make a loan shark blush. As I'm about to leave, Lily runs up, hugging my legs. Mommy, where are you going? I kneel down, looking her in the eye. Mommy's got some unfinished business, baby, but when I come back, we're going to celebrate big, be time. I kiss her forehead, then head out. In the car, I take a deep breath. This is it, the moment I've been waiting for. I pull up to the house, my old house. Memories flood back, both good and bad. For a second, I hesitate, but then I remember that night, standing on the porch, pregnant and alone. Game on. I stride up to the door, confidence oozing from every pore. I raise my hand to knock, a smile creeping across my face. Oh, this is going to be good. I knock, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. Karen opens the door, and her face shifts from confusion to shock faster than you can say, Karma. Tessa, what on earth are you doing here? I push past her, striding into the living room like I own the place, because, well, I do. Family meeting, now. Bob and Mike rush in, probably expecting the cops or something. The look on their faces when they see me, priceless. Mike stammers, what's going on? Tessa, what are you doing here? I slap the papers down on the coffee table. Meet your new landlord, boys and girls. The room explodes, Karen shrieking, Bob's face turns purple, and Mike, he just stands there, mouth hanging open like a fish. This is impossible, you can't do this, Bob bellows. Oh, but I can, and I did. Now let's talk about your new lease agreement. I lay it out for them, rent jacked up just under market value, no pets, no subletting, no changes without my express permission, the whole works. This is highway robbery, Karen screeches. No, Karen, this is business, something you should understand, given how you treated me. Mike finally finds his voice. Tessa, why are you doing this? I turn to him, all that old pain and anger bubbling up. You want to know why? Let me spell it out for you, Mike. I tell them everything, about the nights I slept in my car, the struggle to find work while pregnant, giving birth with only Jade by my side. While you were here playing happy families, I was out there fighting to survive, for me, and for our daughter. Remember her, Mike, the baby you kicked out along with me? Mike looks like I just slapped him, stunned into silence. But you know what? I made it. I built a life, a career, all on my own, no thanks to any of you. Bob tries to put on a tough front. We'll fight this, you can't get away with it, he blusters. I laugh, and it feels good. Go ahead, try, but don't forget, I'm not just your landlord, I'm the realtor who knows every dirty little secret about this house, every code violation, every unpermitted renovation. One call from me, and this place is condemned faster than you can blink. Their confidence deflates like a popped balloon. They know they're beaten. So, here's how it's going to be. You follow the rules, and we won't have any problems. But if you cross me, you'll be out on the street before you can even say karma. I gather up my papers, feeling lighter than I have in years. As I reach the door, I turn back one last time. Oh, and Mike? Lily says hi. Not that you'd know what she looks like these days. I walk out, head held high. Behind me, I can hear Karen sobbing and Bob cursing, but all I feel is peace. I did it. I took back my power, and it feels damn good. As I drive away, I can't help but smile. Lily's waiting for me at home, and we've got some celebrating to do. Life's funny sometimes. They thought they were ruining me, but in the end, they made me stronger than ever. Watch out, world, Tessa's back, and she's taking no prisoners. Now, here's a question for you. Was Tessa justified in buying her in-laws' house and imposing those harsh rental terms? Or did she take it too far in her quest for revenge? After all, they kicked her out while she was pregnant, but she also separated a father from his child. Where's the line between justice and vengeance, and did Tessa cross it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to hear what you think, and if this story fired you up, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of revenge and justice. You won't want to miss what's coming next.
I'm Haley, currently 25 years old, residing in Salt Lake City with my parents. I had been married to my now ex-husband for 2 years. Our marriage was somewhat arranged, as our families had been members of the same church for years. Justin and I had known each other since high school, although we were never close friends. After he returned from college, our fathers thought we would be a good match, and we got married after only 4 months of dating. Initially, I didn't know how to love a guy who had never shown interest in me before, but I tried my best. Unfortunately, I succeeded in loving him, even though it was clear that he was never in love with me. He fulfilled his husbandly duties and was never unkind, so I just accepted the situation. I'd even found happiness for a while, but suddenly, he felt he couldn't continue. One morning, feeling a bit unwell, I asked Justin to take me to the doctor. He refused, claiming he was busy and suggested I take some medicine and rest. This hurt me, and I even shed some tears. I followed his advice, but my condition didn't improve. Eventually, I took the car keys and drove myself to the hospital. It took a while for the doctor to reveal the diagnosis. I was pregnant. I cried tears of joy on my way home, eagerly anticipating Justin's reaction to the news. I selected baby clothes and soft toys to surprise him, planning to capture his reaction for social media. Upon arriving home, I found the house locked. Using my key, I entered, wondering where he could be at such a late hour. Just as I was about to call him, I noticed papers on the living room table. There was a stack of stamped papers that I immediately recognized as divorce papers. Next to them was a letter explaining that he could no longer continue, as he had fallen in love with another woman who was waiting for him. He had tried to start anew with me but couldn't find the same love, so he was leaving. Justin wanted nothing more to do with me, asking me to sign the divorce papers and receive compensation from his lawyer in a few days. He had also sold our house, and he left me with only a small sum of money. I am now 6 months pregnant, and just yesterday, I received a call from Justin for the first time in the past 6 months. He informed me that this month would be the last time he would send me compensation money, and that he wouldn't be sending any more. He didn't inquire about my well-being, my living situation, or if I was okay. In turn, I decided not to share anything with him. I chose not to reveal that I was carrying his baby. I believe he doesn't deserve to know. My parents argue that this is unfair to him and that I should inform him, but I refuse. I won't tell a man who couldn't even care about my life and well-being that I'm carrying his child. He led me to despair, and if my child suffers the same fate, it's his responsibility. I doubt he would care enough to return. My parents have been supportive, but not understanding. They believe I could use my pregnancy to lure Justin back, but I refuse to resort to such tactics. I cherish my parents. They've stood by me unwaveringly. My father even severed his long-standing friendship with Justin's father upon learning what he did to me. He was ready to confront him, but my mother and I stopped him. Despite their support, I still feel like a burden. I'm 26 now, and relying on them doesn't sit right with me. 3 months after Justin left, I found work as a receptionist to make ends meet. It's not much, but it's my first proper job, and the little I earn helps me find solace at night. I've been keeping an eye on Justin, even though I know I have no right to do so anymore. He has gone back to his college girlfriend, a tall, pretty lawyer. I can understand why he couldn't get over her, especially considering me. They're now engaged. It didn't take him a year to break our marriage and promise another girl a wedding ring. The night I saw her engagement announcement on her Instagram story, I cried myself to sleep. After months of attempting to move on, I broke down again. I loved him, and he left me without a second thought, simply because he believed he had a better option. Now I'm left with his child, a secret he knows nothing about. I wonder, if I tell him, would he come back? Am I wrong for keeping his baby a secret from him? Hey, everyone. I haven't updated you in a while, but your positive comments have truly helped me feel less alone and miserable. After my last update, I made a conscious decision to stop dwelling on my ex-husband. I wanted to move forward for my own well-being, my family, and my little boy. Yes, I gave birth to a baby boy who will be turning 5 in a few months. A lot has changed over the years. I no longer live with my parents but in a house I purchased with my hard-earned money, aided by a little help from the bank. I worked tirelessly, climbing the ranks from a receptionist to eventually becoming the manager of the inn where I started. After my son was born, nothing else mattered. I still miss having a partner to share the love for my child, but I couldn't envision that with anyone else. Love lost its appeal. I just wanted to focus on taking care of my baby and find happiness within my family. Justin's absence became a part of my life, so when he suddenly reappeared years later, I was taken aback. I was returning home from work one day when I found him standing in front of my parents' house. His face lit up when he saw me, and I felt like I was losing my mind. He looked just the same. I noticed his car parked nearby, and he was alone. I offered an awkward smile and a wave, and he greeted me with an awkward hug. He asked how I was doing, but before I could respond, my son, Ronan, ran up to me, calling out, "Mom," and hugged my leg. I lifted Ronan into my arms, and Justin's eyes widened as he looked at my baby. He blurted out, "You're married." I gave him a pointed look and replied, "I'm not, but he is," gesturing to Ronan. Justin confessed that he was no longer with Camilla, and I simply said, "Good for you," trying to walk away. He stopped me and asked the question I had been dreading, if the boy in my arms was his. I felt cornered. I had to answer. So, I admitted that he was indeed his child. Justin looked at me with a sense of betrayal, his eyes welling up with tears as he asked why I hadn't told him, why I hadn't called him, making him believe he had no child. I had no words. I just stood there. Seeing him broken like that, I regretted not telling him, not revealing the truth, and keeping it a secret to punish him for the pain he had caused me for leaving me. I felt like an awful person. I have a loving family now. There was a time when I felt like I was trapped in hell and thought I'd never escape it. But life has transformed into a heavenly experience, and I'm profoundly grateful for it. God truly works in mysterious ways, and if one maintains faith, it's never in vain. The three of us, Justin, Ronan, and I, have become the perfect little family I had always dreamed of. Justin returned to Utah after learning about Ronan. He earnestly begged for my forgiveness, acknowledging that choosing Camilla over a woman who loved him so much was the worst mistake of his life. Camilla, on the other hand, had been starting a new family and suggested an open marriage, which ultimately led to their divorce. Justin came back to me. I know it may seem a little pathetic to take him back after all he put me through, but as a woman, I seized every opportunity for a chance at a happy ending. Despite everything, I still love him because I never stopped loving him. When I began sharing my story here, I was feeling incredibly lonely. It felt like there was nothing in the world harder than my life. and I had an overwhelming need to release my emotions. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anyone who truly cared, so I decided to share my story here and ask if I deserve what had happened to me. All your kind thoughts and support carried me through the tough times, and I'll forever be grateful for them. Thank you. To those who question my decisions, I understand your perspective, but life is complex, and we sometimes make choices others may not understand. I'm just doing what feels right for me. Now, let's switch to a different topic. This upcoming weekend, a group of my friends and I, all in our late 20s and early 30s, are planning to stay at my family's cabin. Two of my friends, Chad and Rebecca, have children, though not together. Chad's situation isn't a big issue because it's not his weekend to have his kids. They'll be with their mother. However, Rebecca encountered a problem when her sister couldn't watch her son due to unexpected circumstances. I sympathized and asked if she had an alternative sitter, to which she replied in the negative. She decided to bring her son along for the weekend. I explained that this weekend wasn't really kid-friendly. We planned on drinking and engaging in adult activities. Rebecca questioned why we needed to drink, suggesting it could still be a fun getaway for everyone, including her son. I firmly declined, pointing out that Chad wasn't bringing his kids either. She argued that he should bring them so they could all hang out together. I stood my ground, emphasizing that this trip was meant for adults without children. Frustrated, Rebecca asked if this meant she couldn't come. I responded that if she found a sitter, she was welcome to join us. She accused me of being unfair, insinuating that I was excluding her because she was a parent. She claimed that eventually, everyone else would have kids too. And then what would I do? I calmly stated that I would hang out alone, but she abruptly hung up on me. My concern wasn't solely about the child. It was Rebecca's tendency to alter plans to accommodate her son. I feared our trip would turn into a kid-friendly, alcohol-free event, disrupting our initial plans. For instance, during a festival we attended this summer, everything revolved around her son's preferences. When we suggested splitting up, so some of us could enjoy specific activities, she objected. Later, another friend called, questioning my decision to uninvite Rebecca. I explained my perspective, emphasizing that while I understood things happen, Rebecca consistently altered plans to suit her child. I argued that it wasn't fair for her to change the entire trip, and I stood by my decision. I don't believe I'm in the wrong here. It's my family cabin, and I have the responsibility to ensure everyone's safety and comfort. Allowing an unplanned child in such a setting poses legal risks and complications. I suggest having an honest conversation with the friend group, expressing our desire to stick to the initial plans. Rebecca is welcome to join, provided she finds suitable childcare for her son. It's not about excluding her. It's about maintaining the trip's original purpose and respecting everyone's choices. People need to understand that becoming a parent changes one's lifestyle, and it shouldn't force others to adjust theirs to accommodate them. I won't be bullied into hanging out with other people's kids, and I'm firm in my decision. I'm a 19-year-old woman, and I moved out of my family home today. I'm the oldest of 6 siblings, and I live with my parents and brothers. Growing up, I was expected to babysit my siblings, take care of them, and handle many chores, while my brothers were exempt from any responsibilities. Despite my parents' resistance, I pursued my education and applied for independent financing to attend university. On the moving day, when my parents and siblings were out, I packed my belongings, left a prepared letter, and discreetly departed for my university town. I had to leave secretly because they wouldn't have allowed me to go. I received multiple calls from them, but I only answered once, and they yelled at me, demanding my return. I didn't disclose my address to them. When I shared my story with my flatmates, one of them called me an a-hole and suggested I give my parents my address. I'm unsure if I made the right decision. My flatmate criticized me, but I felt it was necessary to escape an abusive situation. I didn't tell them in advance because I knew they would stop me and disrupt my education. I believe I had the right to leave, but I'm now questioning if I was wrong for leaving suddenly. The responses I've received so far have reassured me that I made the right choice. My parents were using me for free labor, expecting me to quit school and work to help them raise my younger siblings. I deserve the chance to pursue my education and live my life without being burdened by their expectations. I answered their phone call to confirm I was safe, which was more than they deserved. I appreciate the advice to be cautious about sharing information and to ensure my location is secure. My new life is starting, and I am determined to make the most of this opportunity. Thank you all for your support. I'm a 30-year-old woman engaged to Joseph Mayo, who's 32. We got engaged a few months ago, but haven't begun planning our wedding. We currently live separately because I'm the primary caregiver for my mother. My parents divorced a few years back, and ever since, I've taken on the role of taking care of my mother. It's not because she's old or physically incapable. Rather, she's never worked a day in her life and doesn't earn her own income. I'm the sole breadwinner of the family, and despite a less than ideal upbringing marked by my mother's narcissistic tendencies and strict standards, I can't bring myself to leave her alone. Recently, my sister Maria, who is 37, faced some marital troubles. She called our mother in tears, explaining that her husband Carl, who is 40, had kicked her out of the house, and they were heading for a divorce. Maria was devastated and unable to speak through her tears when she reached our home. After calming down, she revealed that her husband was furious about her spending habits, despite the fact that she's a stay-at-home wife with traditional gender role expectations. Despite Carl initially accepting these arrangements, the rising cost of living led to arguments between them. Maria dipped into their savings to splurge on unnecessary luxury items and services, leading to the final straw. Carl felt he couldn't work long hours only to come home to a wife who refused to grasp the financial difficulties they were facing. I sympathized with Carl to some extent, given Maria's spending tendencies. However, neither my mother nor Maria saw eye to eye with Carl's perspective, which was not surprising, considering their history as non-contributors who had never held a job. Maria divided the household chores with Carl, expecting him to come home from work and cook as well, which seemed overwhelming for him. I couldn't help but feel for him in this situation. I knew it wasn't the right time to confront Maria about her actions, especially when she was already heartbroken. I offered Maria a place to stay with us for as long as she needed, despite requiring some budget adjustments on my part. It was the right thing to do since she had nowhere else to go. The initial days were challenging as we all adjusted to this new living arrangement. Maria's emotional breakdowns were frequent, and I couldn't help but empathize with her situation. During one of her moments of vulnerability, she suggested that out of respect for her divorce and her grieving period, I should postpone my wedding for at least 3 years. She felt this would give her time to process her divorce. I stared at her in utter disbelief because there was no way I was going to postpone my wedding for her. When I looked at Mom, she simply nodded in agreement, as if this was a perfectly reasonable suggestion. I firmly declined and retreated upstairs to my room. Imagine my shock when, 2 weeks later, I spotted her in a cafe with Joseph, laughing and chatting as if nothing had happened. Joseph had told me he had errands to run, and I had no idea he was meeting up with my sister. I was livid, and I confronted them. But Maria brushed me off, claiming she was merely trying to be friendly with a new member of the family. I found this behavior utterly unacceptable, especially coming from Joseph, who was well aware of my strained relationship with my mother and sister. I stormed home and confided in Mom about what I had witnessed. To my astonishment, she remained nonchalant, stating that it was okay because Joseph was good-looking and she needed the confidence boost. According to her, who else to turn to for such reassurance than family? I couldn't believe my ears. I reminded her that Joseph technically wasn't even family, considering they didn't want me marrying him for the next 3 years. Yet, here she was, cozying up to my fiancé as if it were nothing. Mom casually asserted that this was how things were and warned me to prepare for Joseph to leave me, citing Maria's attractiveness as an inevitability that would lead men astray. I couldn't fathom my own mother, whom I supported, saying something so hurtful. I realized I needed to rid my life of this negativity, both from Mom and Maria. Determined, I put my plan into motion. I began searching for one-bedroom condos to rent and shortlisted a few job options that either my mom or Maria could pursue to support themselves. I was tired of being their cash cow and emotional punching bag. After a couple of weeks, I found a suitable place not far from my workplace. I kept my distance from Joseph, deciding to give them the silent treatment, as my mind was already burdened with too much. I had made up my mind to end things with Joseph due to his concerning connection with my sister. Once I had everything arranged, I called for a family meeting in the living room. I told Mom and Maria that I was moving out. Although I had covered the rent for the upcoming month, they would have to figure out their situation afterward. Maria had the audacity to laugh at my decision, but I was dead serious. I handed them a list of jobs I had researched, explaining that these positions could cover their basic expenses. I made it clear that I was done being taken advantage of by them. All they did was take from me, offering no emotional support in return. My mother reacted hysterically, yelling and breaking things, labeling me a monster and a terrible daughter for doing this to them. I stood my ground, stating that if I was a monster, so be it. I was done catering to their needs. I felt liberated, even though I knew this drastic step was necessary. I questioned if I was being too harsh on my mother and sister, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to cut ties with them. Joseph finally called me, puzzled about my cold demeanor. I shared my new address and updated him on the situation. I revealed that Maria had been flirting with him, and my mother had implicitly encouraged it. Joseph showed me a text from my mom, claiming they were planning a surprise birthday party for me. He had met Maria at the cafe, expecting both of them to be there. However, my mother had backed out at the last minute, leaving Maria to be overly flirtatious. Joseph sensed something was wrong and wanted to share this with me, but my distant attitude had prevented him from doing so. I apologized for my behavior, and I asked him to cut off all contact with my family and block them, which he promptly did. Joseph and I reconciled, but with this new information about my family, I knew forgiveness was beyond reach. Our wedding date has been set, and despite the overwhelming details and planning ahead, I'm filled with excitement. I cannot wait for this new chapter of my life to begin. On another note, my mother has found a job somewhere, but she continues to hurl insults at me whenever she gets the chance. I remain undisturbed, having cut all ties with both her and Maria. I've deliberately removed their negativity from my life, and since moving out, I've found immense happiness. Today, I had my first dress fitting, and I felt absolutely beautiful. Although I missed my mother and wished she could be there, I was surrounded by an amazing group of friends who offered their unwavering support. My aunt, a motherly figure to me, drove down to help, and she's been incredibly supportive throughout the entire wedding planning process. Joseph's family has also been remarkably helpful and understanding. Paul, one of Joseph's relatives, reached out to offer his assistance. He assured me that I could call him anytime if I needed help with the wedding preparations. He's even invited to the wedding, unlike my mother and Maria, a fact that now makes me chuckle. While there are moments when I find myself missing my mother, deep down, I know that removing her from my life was the best decision I could have made. I'm embracing this new chapter with positivity and surrounded by people who genuinely care about my happiness. Diego, congratulations on your wedding. I'm delighted to see you surrounded by such supportive people now. I'm incredibly proud of you for standing up for yourself. Good job. Let them wallow in their misery and complaints. You don't owe them a thing after all you've done for them. Focus on your future and let them stay in the past where they belong. As for my own story, I'm a 27-year-old woman who has been a sleepwalker since I was 7 years old. This condition has been a part of my life, with periods of respite ranging from a few weeks to a few months. Every person I've dated has known about my sleepwalking, and my now husband Julian, a 30-year-old man, was no exception. He found it amusing and accepted it without hesitation. However, Julian's mother never warmed up to me, and her disapproval seemed unrelated to my sleepwalking. She simply felt I wasn't good enough for her son. Julian consistently stood up for me, defending our relationship. When he informed her of our decision to get married, he firmly shut down any unnecessary comments, forcing her into reluctant silence. For a few weeks before our wedding, Julian's mother had to move in with us due to a minor accident she had. Sharing a space with her was something I dreaded, but I accepted it since it was Julian's duty to care for his mother. We got married 10 days ago, and as expected, My mother-in-law found fault with everything I did. On the first night, she witnessed me sleepwalking and screamed in fear. Unaware of her reaction due to my condition, I continued my sleepwalking routine. Julian found the situation rather amusing and recounted the entire incident the next morning. Mother-in-law, frightened, called me names like witch, but Julian intervened, explaining my condition to her. Despite his explanation, she remained resentful, considering me a threat due to her religious beliefs, which had not influenced Julian during his upbringing. I calmly clarified my condition to her, but she remained unconvinced. The real blow came one night when mother-in-law insisted I sleep away from Julian to prevent my demonic habits from affecting him. She even threatened to lock me outside to protect her son from what she perceived as my affliction. I gazed at her in utter disbelief, but her expression remained deadly serious. On the other hand, Julian couldn't contain his laughter. He told his mom to leave us alone and assured her that we'd see her tomorrow. After a lingering stare at me, she eventually left the room. The following morning, I awoke to find myself on the porch, bewildered about how I had ended up there. My mother-in-law suggested I might have picked the lock and gone outside, a possibility that didn't seem far-fetched, considering I had done it a couple of times as a child. I brushed it off as a rare occurrence and carried on with my day. However, the next day, I found myself on the porch again, which was strange because such a pattern had never occurred before. I discussed my concerns with Julian, who shared my worry. He decided to have cameras installed around the house and promised to check on me periodically during the night. I appreciated his concern and cooperation, but requested him not to inform his mother about the cameras. While the camera company was setting up, I accompanied mother-in-law to her regular doctor visits. We maintained a silent distance, a situation that suited me just fine. Upon our return from the doctor's appointment, the cameras had been installed. The following morning, I once again found myself on the porch, confirming my suspicions that something was amiss, and I suspected my mother-in-law's involvement. Observing her unusual smugness over the past few days, I quietly went upstairs and reviewed the footage from the cameras. Suddenly, it all fell into place. My mother-in-law had been scheming behind my back. She would rise in the middle of the night, open the main door wide, while ensuring all the internal doors were closed. When I, sleepwalking, ventured outside due to the open door, she would shoot and bolt it shut, preventing my return. In the early hours of the morning, she would discreetly reopen the latch to suggest that the door wasn't locked, creating a false narrative that I had gone out on my own. I couldn't fathom the extent of her deceit, especially considering her supposed illness. Yet here she was, plotting to keep me away from my husband at night. I felt an urgent need to tell Julian about my discovery, but I knew he was overwhelmed with work and had to leave on a 2-day business trip that night. Realizing that this situation had become increasingly dangerous, I decided I had to confront his mother on my own. A part of me wanted to confront her directly, but the vengeful side of me sought to make her understand the consequences of her actions. I reached out to my dad, knowing he had connections in the area due to his realtor background. He had maintained good relations with many people, including the man in whose house my mother-in-law resided. It was my dad's influence that had secured her a place at a lower rent. I asked him to call the man and persuade him to increase the rent for my mother-in-law starting next month. Meanwhile, I continued to document the sleepwalking incidents, ensuring I had evidence of her deceit every morning. When Julian returned home, I revealed his mother's actions to him. Initially, he was skeptical, but after viewing the recordings, he became furious. He confronted his mother, informing her that she was no longer welcome in our home. She attempted to justify herself, claiming she was protecting him from the same demons she believed possessed me. Julian firmly told her she needed to leave immediately. She reacted with tears and tantrums, but Julian stood his ground. Though she left reluctantly, I knew life would only get tougher for her. I questioned whether I was in the wrong for standing up against my mother-in-law. A week passed since her departure. The sleepwalking continued, but at least I no longer ventured outside the house. Today, my mother-in-law called, sounding upset and anxious, discussing her financial struggles. She expressed a desire to live with us. Julian firmly rejected her request, refusing to jeopardize my safety. She asked for money. but Julian declined, emphasizing that her affordable housing had been arranged due to my dad's connections, making it clear that she couldn't exploit my parents' contacts while mistreating me. Eventually, she said she wanted to apologize to me, but I told Julian that I had no interest in her drama and requested her to leave me alone. I'm not concerned about how my mother-in-law plans to arrange the money. She will likely have to downsize, but Julian and I are adamant that she won't be living with us. She has moved to a smaller place, which is thankfully further away from us. However, she has completely vilified me, spreading negative comments about me on Facebook. While I usually avoid such drama, Julian refused to tolerate it. He publicly exposed her mistreatment of me, leading other family members to turn against her and call her out on her behavior. Since then, there has been a significant silence on her end. Julian and I are currently enjoying our honeymoon in Italy. We've explored Rome and are heading to Venice, Milan, and Bologna. If time allows, we might visit other countries, but our main focus is Italy. My mother-in-law was bitter when she found out about our trip to Italy and attempted to make amends. However, I know her true intentions now. Julian has left any possibility of reconciliation up to me, respecting my decision not to reconcile with her. Mother-in-law tried to play the victim on Facebook again, but she was promptly shut down by others. It was quite satisfying, and I can't help but revel in my pettiness. I'm grateful to have a supportive husband who stood up against his mother for me, as not all spouses are willing to do so. I'm looking forward to the rest of my life with Julian, enjoying every moment. Thank you for your kind words and support. Remember, if you have your own story to share, feel free to email us at the address provided in the description. Your engagement with the channel through likes and subscriptions is greatly appreciated. We'll be back soon with more stories. Thank you for tuning in. I, a 32-year-old woman, have been married to my husband Ryan, who is 35 years old, for 4 years now. My background is quite different from Ryan's. I come from a broken family where my mother struggled with addiction, and my father had to care for me and my sister. Unfortunately, my sister chose to live with our mom and also became addicted, leaving me with a sense of isolation. In contrast, Ryan's family is a tight-knit and extensive clan. He has a brother, 3 sisters, numerous uncles, and aunts, all of whom are incredibly close. They celebrate Christmas together every year, which is a heartwarming experience. I'm truly grateful not only for Ryan, but also for his family. Ryan and his brother Cole don't always see eye to eye, with some remnants of sibling rivalry, though they generally get along. Their fundamental difference lies in their worldviews. Ryan, coming from a big family, has always wanted to have a family of his own, a sentiment I share. I've never experienced the joys of a large, supportive family and the constant activity in the household. On the other hand, Cole vehemently opposes having children. He and his wife, Ruth, refuse to have kids or even be around them, which has become a major point of contention between Ryan and Cole. Things took a turn for the worse when I became pregnant. While everyone in the family was ecstatic and in celebratory spirits, Ruth and Cole acted as though a great tragedy had befallen me. Their comments were hurtful, suggesting I should plan a farewell party instead of a baby shower because I'd be saying goodbye to my life. They also made insensitive remarks about how I'd become fat and ugly for the rest of my life. Ryan attempted to intervene, but they remained stubborn, so we decided to limit contact with them. Fortunately, Ryan's sisters supported our decision, as they were also fed up with Cole and Ruth's behavior. All 3 of them had kids of their own, and Cole and Ruth were never willing to assist, even in emergencies. My pregnancy was challenging, especially as we were expecting twins, and I battled severe nausea and debilitating swelling in my feet by the end of the 2nd trimester. I used to struggle after walking just 20 meters, gasping for breath. Throughout this challenging period, Ryan had been my rock, offering unwavering support. His sister, Allison, also came to our aid. Among Ryan's 3 sisters, 2 resided in other states. However, Allison, the eldest, lived in the same city as us, and her assistance was a true blessing. Allison herself had a 3-year-old daughter named Sarah, who was an absolute sweetheart. Sarah adored spending time with both Ryan and me and never missed an opportunity to help with babysitting. When my twins were born, our entire family came to celebrate the joyous occasion. However, Cole and Ruth, Ryan's brother and sister-in-law, were notably absent. Despite the help from the rest of the family, managing 2 infants was quite a challenge, but having the support of my family made things more manageable. Then, one night, at 11 p.m., I received a call from Child Protective Services, CPS, informing us that both Ryan and I were required to immediately go to a specific address. I explained that I had twins and at least one parent needed to stay with them. CPS insisted that I come while leaving Ryan with the children, as they had received a report of an unattended child alone in a house a few streets away, and that house belonged to Cole. My mind raced with a million thoughts as I made my way there. Initially, I assumed it was a mistake. I even considered the possibility that one of the two had a secret child, but it seemed highly unlikely. Upon arriving at the house, I saw several officers present and a terrified, sobbing Sarah. She was crying so hard that it seemed her lungs might burst. Without hesitation, I rushed to her and embraced her tightly as she clung to me. Sarah's emotional state shocked me. Allison was nowhere to be found, and the CPS representatives began asking me how I knew Zara and if I was aware of her mother's whereabouts. I explained that she was my sister-in-law's daughter, and I was often the one to babysit her in case of emergencies. It left me bewildered as to why Sarah was in this situation. They requested that I call Allison, but she was not answering her phone. Additionally, they inquired with the person who had informed them about what he had witnessed. He explained that he had witnessed a tall woman with short brown hair driving up with Sarah a few hours earlier. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Colin and Ruth, were present in the house at that time. According to the witness, he saw them engage in a heated argument for a while, after which Allison left the house in tears. Within an hour and a half, both Colin and Ruth left the house with bags and everything they needed. When the witness inquired about Sarah's well-being, they dismissively told him to mind his own business. This incident occurred around 8 p.m. The witness waited for their return, but when they didn't come back, he decided to call CPS. I was livid. It felt like steam was coming out of my ears. I couldn't believe the audacity and insensitivity of Colin and Ruth. I was also upset with Allison. Why hadn't she called me? Why did she have to leave Sarah with those 2 irresponsible individuals for such a long time? My anger led me to file a complaint with the police against Colin and Ruth. I didn't care about the consequences. All that mattered was Sarah's safety. When I returned home with Sarah from the police station and shared the details with Ryan, he disagreed with my decision. He insisted that, regardless of their actions, Colin and Ruth were still family, and we didn't know their reasoning behind their behavior. Now, I'm starting to question whether he might be right. I don't have the full story, and my decision to file a complaint might have serious consequences. Despite Sarah's safety, I'm doubting my judgment. Was I too hasty in going to the police without knowing the complete truth? Eventually, we managed to reach Allison. CPS had also contacted her, informing her that Sarah was with them. Allison explained that her husband, Mark, had met with a severe accident, and she had to rush to the hospital. In this emergency, she had contacted Colin and Ruth, asking them to take care of Sarah for just one night. She had promised to collect her the next morning. Allison had even packed Sarah's food, and Sarah, being a quiet and undemanding child, wouldn't have caused them much trouble. All these arrangements were made through texts and calls before she dropped Sarah off at their place. Allison didn't want to burden us because she knew we were already dealing with a lot. When she left Sarah with them, they began berating her, claiming they were child-free and had no time for such responsibilities. Allison pleaded with them because Mark was in critical condition, and she couldn't take Sarah to the hospital with her. Reluctantly, Colin and Ruth agreed. After that, Allison had no idea what happened. She called them at 10 p.m., and they assured her that Sarah was fine. It was only when CPS called her that she realized they had left Sarah alone and gone on a vacation. She was sobbing uncontrollably, mentioning that now that Mark was out of danger, she faced the risk of losing her child. Ryan drove her back from the hospital, and we managed to put both her and Sarah to sleep. Ryan's anger was palpable, and it was the angriest I had ever seen him. He made numerous calls to Cole, at least 20 or more times, but it all went straight to voicemail. My disdain for people had reached a new low, and Colin and Ruth were the ones responsible for setting this new standard. It was indeed a harrowing day. Cole and Ruth eventually returned home. They had been summoned for questioning, and they were furious with me for reporting them when, in their opinion, it was none of my business. I firmly told them to back off, emphasizing that their child-free status should not take precedence over helping the family in times of such distress. Their child-free choice should not outweigh the safety and well-being of a 3-year-old child. I stressed that anything could have happened to Sarah while she was left alone in a house that was not child-proofed. I urged them to reconsider their priorities. Fortunately, the police officer understood Allison's situation, and although Cole and Ruth were let off with a warning, they had to pay a hefty fine. Currently, we are not on speaking terms, and I couldn't be happier. It has been a month since Mark's accident and the entire ordeal. He is getting discharged today. Sarah had been mostly living with us during this time, and she caused no trouble at all. Allison is understandably exhausted, so Ryan will be going to assist her. One of Ryan's other sisters has also come over to lend a helping hand. This has undoubtedly been a tough period for the family, but we made it through. Everyone, including my mother-in-law and father-in-law, has distanced themselves from Cole and Ruth. To be honest, they deserve it. I am simply relieved that the nightmare is over. Regardless of what happened, Sarah is Allison's responsibility, and she should not expect others to make exceptions for her. She is the parent, and she needs to be prepared. I completely understand that some people choose to be child-free, but sometimes you do things for others even if it makes you uncomfortable or annoyed. That's how relationships are built and maintained. It's disheartening to see how selfish they have been. You're definitely not the one at fault here. Neither your brother-in-law nor your mother-in-law have acted like rational and responsible adults, and they had this coming. I'm relieved that nothing happened to Sarah, and I feel deeply sorry for Allison. You absolutely did the right thing, OP. I live in a large apartment complex. One day, as I was heading out with my dog, I needed to take the elevator down. My dog is 8 years old and incredibly well-behaved. She doesn't bark at anyone and has a calm demeanor. She only approaches strangers in public when they signal for her to come to them. She's a medium-sized dog, and I can't imagine anyone finding her intimidating. She is always on a leash when we're outside the house, unless we're in a designated area where dogs can be off-leash. While waiting for the elevator, it arrived, and there were 2 people inside, a female aged 15 to 20 and another female aged 20 to 25. When the elevator doors opened, my dog attempted to enter, but the younger woman inside started shrieking, loudly expressing her fear of dogs. I calmly informed her that the elevator was for everyone, including dogs, and we both stepped inside. As a courtesy, I kept my dog on a very short leash, positioning her behind my legs at the opposite end of the elevator. However, the passenger continued yelling, insisting that we leave. I responded by saying she could take the next elevator as she didn't want to ride with a dog. Despite her protests, she chose to stay, and we had an uneventful 20-second journey to the ground floor. At no point did she mention being allergic to dogs, which might have warranted me taking a different elevator. Upon exiting, she made several comments, some quite rude, but I ignored her and proceeded to my car. I wonder if I was under any obligation to accommodate her by taking another elevator. I understand the analogy of the sword, meaning if it were another situation, I would have waited. However, in this case, it wasn't about my appearance. It was about my dog, whom I consider part of my family. I find it difficult to accept discrimination against my dog, just as I would against any family member. Am I in the wrong here? Should I have chosen to wait for the next elevator? I appreciate the feedback, even the critical ones. I posted this to learn, grow, and be better. I acknowledge my oversight, and I understand now that it wouldn't have cost me anything to wait for the next elevator. I will make that choice in similar situations in the future. Additional context: my dog was behind my legs, pressed against the elevator wall. The other passenger could have easily exited if they had wished. I want to clarify that I did not corner her, as some have suggested. I was positioned between the other passenger and my dog was on a very short leash. On a related note, we are planning to visit my husband's mother's house for Thanksgiving. I brought up a month ago that we should time our visit differently because my 1-year-old son, whose birthday falls in February, needs a nap and already has issues with being at their house. My son doesn't particularly enjoy visiting their house for some reason, and he's quite resistant to being put down. However, we had a breakthrough in making plans for our Thanksgiving visit. He had a full nap right before we left for their house, which made him more receptive to being there. My mother-in-law and I decided that it would be best for everyone if we met up at their house around 5 in the evening. This way, my son could have a proper nap, eat when he got there, and feel more comfortable. My brother-in-law called her yesterday, and it seems she didn't relay the information to him about our plans for a later dinner. He mentioned that he was going to his girlfriend's mom's place at 6 and wanted to do dinner at noon. This caused my mother-in-law to call my husband, and she was visibly upset, even hyperventilating, apparently because my brother-in-law wanted to change the time and was asking my husband for approval. This is where our argument began. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and my husband works full-time. I firmly believe that children up to 7 years old should have their naps because it's crucial for their development. I expressed my frustration to my husband, explaining that if I had known the time was going to change, I would have adjusted our son's sleep schedule. I didn't want to go there and have an upset child who missed his nap and wouldn't eat until 4. My husband's response was that our son would have to do things he doesn't want to in life, so it shouldn't matter if he doesn't get a proper nap. I became upset because I felt like he wasn't prioritizing our child's needs over dinner plans. I understand that I could be the one in the wrong here, but I don't see how it's fair to our son to skip his nap altogether. I just didn't understand why my husband wasn't putting our child's well-being first over dinner plans. I recognize that my child doesn't revolve around our schedule. Instead, we should adapt our schedule to meet his needs. I got upset because I couldn't comprehend why my husband wasn't putting our child's well-being first over dinner plans. I understand that I might be in the wrong here, but I don't see how it's fair to our son to skip his nap altogether. I'm torn, Reddit, so please let me know if I'm being unreasonable here. I'll gladly answer any questions to provide more clarity. Update. I've decided to give up the fight and just go when they say. Everyone else's happiness seems to matter more in this situation, and I've reached a point where I no longer care. When my husband came home, he immediately called his mom and vented his frustration about the sudden change in dinner time, emphasizing how absurd it was to cater to his older brother. He passionately expressed his annoyance for nearly 2 hours, highlighting his brother-in-law's disrespectful behavior, which we've grown to despise. Oh my goodness, everyone in this post is absolutely wild. I want to express my gratitude to all of you who truly understand the challenges of children's sleep schedules and the chaos that ensues when it's disrupted. We've decided to comply with the new time, although my husband informed his mother that we might not be able to eat much, as our son is likely to be upset, given the change in his routine. Luckily, he napped an extra hour today, so hopefully that might make things a bit easier, but who knows for sure. Additionally, I am thankful that my husband stood up for us. Initially, he brushed off the significance of our son missing his nap, saying, "Who cares?" just to pacify his mother. However, after reflecting on the situation during the rest of his shift, he came to his senses. Being the youngest in the family, he often feels overshadowed by his mother's preference for his older brothers. There's an ongoing struggle between the siblings, and my husband frequently feels disregarded. Regarding our son sleeping at their house, it's simply not an option. Unlike some children who can fall asleep anywhere, our son doesn't easily settle down. Unfortunately, my husband's family consists only of his mom, his 2 brothers, and his stepdad, with no cousins or extended family. It's a small family, which usually makes planning events ahead of time easier. We confirmed the dinner time with his mom on Sunday, and she admitted that the confusion was entirely her fault for not informing his brother about the set time. However, she has chosen to ignore my husband's inquiry about why she's prioritizing his brother's wishes over the previously agreed upon schedule. The older boys tend to use the tactic of threatening not to show up as leverage, and she believes my husband will follow suit and not attend at all. We've decided to stick with the changed dinner time, putting an end to our earlier disagreements. Yes, my husband has his flaws, just like anyone else, and I'm well aware of my own shortcomings. We make a conscious effort to acknowledge our issues and work on them as a united front, always striving to do what's best for each other. Holidays tend to be a bit challenging for both of us, creating stress and tension at an all-time high. He's been in this situation before and understands it, but the way we met is quite unconventional and wild. However, we genuinely love each other deeply. My husband works 6 days a week, putting in long hours of 9 to 10 hours a day to provide for our family and pay for the house we own. While I am the primary caregiver, he is also very present in our children's lives. Following dinner, as I was on my way home, words were exchanged about his dog's behavior as it kept taking food from my son's hands. I told my brother-in-law to back off, walked into the bathroom, and just as the door latched, I overheard him talking to everyone about me, mentioning that I had told him to back off regarding his dog. Frustrated, I stepped out of the bathroom and impulsively grabbed a handful of freshly carved turkey, which I threw straight at his face. My husband had to step in to calm us down and then went to find his mom, who was likely hiding upstairs, possibly in tears. He eventually convinced me to return inside to finish dinner, with the condition that we drive 2 hours away on Monday to get Hawaiian food. I firmly believe that a child who hasn't had a nap can make dinner a challenging experience for everyone. Your mother-in-law knew and understood this, which is why she agreed to change the dinner time. If you go and your son misbehaves, make sure your husband and brother-in-law step up and deal with it. What are your thoughts on today's stories? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, as it greatly supports the channel. We look forward to seeing you in the next one.